Sorry. And are you doing it together with Artem, or is it?
I think that I'll do it alone.
Oh, you did it alone. Okay. So this is Alexander Piet from Siemens St. Petersburg.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My presentation is about machine learning methods for environmental monitoring and flood protection. At first, I will make a brief overview of flood monitoring problem. After that, I will tell you about common schema of monitoring data processing. Third part will be about development of artificial intelligence component. And I will finish with further research plans and conclusions. Let's start with flood monitoring as we see it in Siemens corporate technology. Flood can be caused by environmental conditions, for example, dike overtopping, or by dike failure. This means that flood monitoring is a mix of dike structural health monitoring and environmental monitoring. And the second important conclusion is that dike abnormal behavior detection is a very important task in flood monitoring. This means that we should build such model which will be able to use input parameters like dike parameters, external conditions, and produce output like flood probability or dike behavior. There are two common classes of such models. Descriptive models, they are restricted to pure geometrical description of failure modes. Parametric cause response models, they include also external influence, but these are more physical models. And we have also non-parametric cause response models. Advantage of these models is that they are derived from measurements. Machine learning methods are widely used for flood monitoring. For example, in the first case, machine learning methods use only environmental conditions to forecast flood. For example, as input can be used rainfall, current, water depth, and we can forecast a level of water. Or we can use classical neural network using training set, using dike behavior to solve this task of abnormal behavior. But what to do if we have no abnormal behavioral patterns? How to solve this task in this case? I will tell you about it next slides later. Let's start with monitoring data processing. There are three main blocks in data processing: data preprocessing, feature extraction, and data analysis. Data preprocessing is commonly used to prepare raw data in such a form that it can be used for further analysis. These blocks can be used in different sequence. We can use as a first case both extracted features and raw data for further analysis, or they can use only features as in second case. Some blocks can be omitted. Let's start with preprocessing. It is a common situation when measurements from different sensors are not synchronized. They have different sample frequency. There are gaps. What to do? At first, we can create a common time grid and align measurements with it. After that, we can fill the gaps. As a result, we will have a stable stream of measurements, and we can characterize state of the object at each timestamp. About feature extraction. So we have a dike with installed sensors in different cross sections. If we will use all measurements as a single vector for dike abnormal behavior, we can guarantee robustness of our dike abnormal behavior approach because of sensor falls, for example. That's why we create some logical groups. For example, we can group sensors according to placement. or we can group sensors according to types of sensors. In this case, we will have some overlapping vectors which will provide us with some kind of physical redundancy. Or we can try to find some analytical functions which can connect sensor measurements in training set, something like linear correlation. This will provide us with some kind of analytical redundancy. Now I will tell you about method of data analysis which can help us to solve the problem of dike abnormal behavior detection if we have no patterns of abnormal behavior. It is so-called one-side classification approach. For example, neural clouds. We built some hyper surface which includes only normal data. We have new measurements, and we check these new measurements with this neural cloud. If these measurements are outside this neural cloud, then we make a decision that these new measurements are abnormal. Inside this neural cloud, these measurements are normal. This approach has several benefits in comparison with classical hypercube thresholds, because neural clouds are more sensitive to changes in system, and we can find some nonlinear correlations between measurements. Now we can describe the whole process of abnormal behavior detection. At first, we synchronize measurements, we fill the gaps. After that, we create some redundant groups, and for each of these groups, we create these one-side classifiers. Described schema was implemented in artificial intelligence component as part of early warning system for flood monitoring. Measurements are published to GMS topic. AI component consumes these measurements from topic and receives and sends results back to topic, and it can be available for decision support system or other components. We have also developed one additional component to test our artificial intelligence component to create some kind of anomalies. Here are results of our testing. We have increased some parameters, and probability, the blue line, goes from 1 to 0. 0 means abnormality. Dike is a complex object, and it is influenced by environmental conditions. And I just want to show a demo how clusters are moving for measurements from one day to another. So this means that it is not so easy to say what is normal behavior or abnormal behavior, because these clusters of measurements are moving. So this means that we should include in our model not only dike parameters but also environmental conditions. In my opinion, it is also important to combine our model with some classical approach. In this case, we can use some reference data about abnormality or normal behavior, and our system will be more robust. In conclusions, I presented most important that we have developed a new approach, and it was integrated into early warning system as first prototype version. It was tested on real-time, real-world data, and it is very important to adapt our model to environmental conditions. This is the most task for further research. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. This is a plea for a combination of the approach of Urban Flood and as-sensor grids for environment. Questions about artificial intelligence? Greg.
Thank you for that. And just to support that point that we're developing real-time model-based approaches with an ensemble, the Kalman filter. I was talking to you a little earlier about the Kalman filter approach, and one of the areas we've always thought is, could we go into the AI or neural network approach for pattern recognition? How do you obviously you need a lot of data, yeah, you were saying you need a lot of data to train the system. How do you, my understanding is that quite rapidly you come up against sort of barrier in training where when you're training an artificial network or an artificial system, after a while you train in error, as it were. There's a limit to how much the training data is effective, and then in fact you begin to damage the pattern recognition component. This is something that colleagues of mine have worked on in the past. Have you I mean, in terms of your training, have you actually looked at the relationship between the degree of training and how effective your outcomes are?
So you mean duration of training of AI components? So this
duration and the number of training runs.
So we need as more data as it possible, so I can say, because in this case we can see the state of object in different states. That's why we should make this component adaptable to different regimes. My answer is we need as much data as it's possible. So.
Okay. So you spent time trying to find.
We have measurements since November 2009. There are several gaps because.
How many does that cost you? So how many data sets would you say that?
I can say that XML files, unzipped XML files, there are more than several gigabytes. Yes. For several months, measurements for several months with a rate of measurements about 5 minutes.
Other questions, Roelof? Just a second.
Okay,
for the record.
So, and again, I'm not an expert in neural networks, but from what I understand, your training data set should have all the different events you can encounter in it. So, for instance, my company does some identification of unexploded ordnance, and they have data sets where they say, okay, well, this is unexploded ordnance, this is not. And so there's lots of data sets that you can train neural network. Now, the fact that you're looking for an event for which you may not have data, how do you deal with that? I mean, you're saying, well, you're training your system on basically on a data set where nothing happens or where things are normal, but how then do you find abnormality if you never have a data set in which you have abnormalities?
So this is the main advantage of this approach, because we say that if we have such a situation when parameters may be inside thresholds, but combination of these parameters is new, then this is already abnormality. but we can use not only raw data as input, we can use also extracted features, something like linear correlations, as additional input. It can be used also as some additional indicator of this abnormality.
I guess my question is that in many cases, for instance, if you do neural network analysis of, say, fraudulent behavior of credit card use, there's many examples of that in real life that you can train a data set on. So you can say, hey, suddenly this old lady is buying a sports car. Okay, not good. Here, we have very few data sets, which I guess the point is, how do you even know? Apart from the ICT, which I admit is a great data set, but we're not really sure how representative of a levy, of a real levy breakthrough. I mean, like, we need, so I guess the question is, you may be training your data to find something, and then something may come around which data set is recognized, and how will you know it? So I guess the issue is, and maybe it's because my background is more physical, like a model-based approach, but I still don't completely agree. And I know how you can classify, I know you have to cluster it, because, hey, my cluster moves so something happens. But one of the things you know is, for instance, if you look on a diurnal, on a yearly variation in terms of the temperature profile, okay? You dig a hole about like a meter and a half deep, you see the temperature change as an effect of daily variations. You see the temperature gradient like moving through the ground. And me and many other people have talked both in the saturated and unsaturated zone. That's what you're going to see. Now you're going to get a heavy winter, and maybe the year before you have very little vegetation, so you get a different thermal coupling into the ground. So all these different patterns are basically going to start playing in. So how will you know, hey, this is really the result of a change in vegetation, a change in evapotranspiration, all these different physical models, or hey, this is really something happening. So I guess I'd like to. And the fact that you don't have training data sets for really validating what's happening, they can sort of but I guess the proof of putting the eating is here we go.
I think you should describe the difficulties of users are encountering. So, and if you really want to monitor large amounts of data, we should automate it. So that's why we have one of the best parties in the world to try to do this. It's a big task for Siemens, and it takes still 3 years.
Lera, you want to comment?
Yeah. Well, actually, the concerns are really very right, and we still need to keep the geotechnical engineers employed. Such that they go and check if the system sends alert. They go and check whether indeed something is happening or it's a false alert. So of course we keep the experts. But on the other hand, I would offer a kind of another approach. So we train the models, the finite element models, which would predict the behavior of dikes on the real experiments like ICT experiments and all the others that they've been doing. And we try to simulate the behavior of the other dikes. And coupling them, we can actually also train the AI to detect some abnormalities. So we model, we predict the virtual sensor behavior. So in case of failure, the sensors would show this, this, and this. And on those virtual sensor parameters, data sets, we can train the AI modules. Well, of course, still, the expert must be in the loop.
I have another question which I want to throw at you guys. What is the cost of a false positive or a false negative?
Tremendous.
Well, I guess it's one of the things that you should be able to tell your system. It's like, if you make everybody feel very safe, and now something happens, then, or if you tell things are happening all the time and you send out your engineers, then what? So
yeah, I think both false positive and false negative warnings are very well harmful. About the artificial intelligence approach, the good thing in urban flood is that we both have the model-based approach and the IEA approach, so we can compare both of them. Greg, you had another question? Well, we have some time left.
2 points that sort of linking up to what's being said here. One is that I guess, in fact, when you begin this process of using AI, it's an ongoing process. It's something that has to evolve over time, and you have to actually gather a lot of background data, and modeled output data can be utilized. But in fact, one of the values of an AI approach, and one of the difficulties of it in terms of implementing, is that sometimes you're just looking for a deviation from norm, but you have to teach the system what norm is. And in fact, that can be one of the most difficult components of AI, is finding non-random, truly random background normality. So what you have is a normality curve, or what is expected. And it's very rare that you can find data that doesn't deviate in some way. And often you can get an AI system that picks up elements we haven't seen within what is called normal data and begins to exaggerate those. And this is one of the problems that has been found, is it's really in the training of the AI system in what is normative. And what it can do is go off and say, this isn't normative, this isn't normative. So maybe it's getting a lot of background data and using the system, not instead of saying something's about to happen, it is now deviating from norm, is more the fundamental use. And then what it's actually achieving may come a lot later, but perhaps one of the first things is simply there is a deviation from a pattern recognized from norm, and then later you begin to recognize specific typologies of deviation.
But the step that we have to make yet, is that we are learning the system what's normal behavior in circumstances like this, but also what's normal behavior when we have a 12 before storm going on. And that's what Alexander said, that we need to have the environmental conditions. So,
hypothetically, who has a car? Who has a formal education in car repairing, car design? So we are driving cars and we are detecting failures in cars by information analysis. Yeah? If you describe the surface of a car with more information, it must be broken, because then you had a crash. If the number of kilometers you drive with petrol, if you divide that number as a funny number, then you call in the experts. If you really want to monitor dikes on those large scales as we are thinking about, we have to get accustomed that computers do the work for us. And the abnormality detection is the only way to go. Model-based calculations for every centimeter of dike do not this 100 years. So we have to getting accustomed that somebody else is making discussions, and that they can make good discussions and expensive decisions and bad discussions. It's the only way to go, and it will hurt when it fails, but there is no escape.
One last comment from you, Jackie.
If you have a car, do you wait till the oil light comes on, or do you check it yourself?
That's a good one. Okay, thanks Alexander, thanks again, and please take a present from the table.